Hey everyone, Fenris Models here, and today we'll be taking a look at my build of Italeri F4U-7 in 1/72 scale for French February. Now for those unaware of what French February is, we'll get into that here shortly, but it's a yearly tradition started by a good friend of the channel, Miss Modeler. For this year, of course, I had to make a French Corsair. The F4U-7 was still produced by the US before being sold to the French, and as such, the interior of the cockpit was painted in interior green 71.010, with the panels picked out in Model Air black. Now for some reason, the kit did not come with a decal for the instrument panel, so instead I opted to dry brush Model Air light gold gray 71.121 over all of the details to really bring them out. Then the cockpit, along with the engine, was sandwiched between the two halves of the fuselage. I like to use extra thin cement to join the two halves together, working in sections and squeezing so that a little of the melted plastic will help fill the gap. Any excess then gets removed with the back of a hobby knife. While the cement sets up, I moved on to the next step. In order to fit the HVAR pylons later in the build, as well as the two drop tanks, we needed to drill some holes in the bottom half of the wings. Using a pin vise, I carefully removed the plastic where indicated. On the plastic itself, there are small indentations indicating where you need to drill. Unfortunately, this does cause some issues later down the line, which we'll address when they come up. Next, it was time to install the air filters. It's worth noting that you do need to be careful here, as there are two different sets of air filters you can install. I assume this was done to reuse the tooling for other variants, but you do need to double check regardless. Otherwise, you'll turn out like I have and accidentally install the incorrect ones. Then the tops of the wings were added, before the whole wing subassembly was added to the fuselage. And then the horizontal stabilizers were added. In order to have the gear bay doors closed, I needed to trim away a few tabs on the door panels. Then they too could be installed. Then I could add in the cannons, and the aerials. Finally, the cockpit canopy was cemented in place. Each half of the fuel tanks were then attached, and the pylons were added to the wings. The canopy was masked and it was on to painting. Model Air Black 71.057 was sprayed along all of the panel lines, as well as any places where shadows may naturally gather, such as at the wing root and under the drop tanks. Then the whole model received a coat of Model Air Glossy Sea Blue 71.300. Despite its name, this paint isn't particularly glossy in and of itself, so we'll need to add in more gloss with the varnish here in a bit. Also, due to the dark hue of this color, it's important to keep in mind to go light with this so the pre-shading can still show through. It's very easy to spray too much and completely lose the effect. Metal color aluminum, 77.701, is then used to paint that R2843W engine and prop spinner. Gunmetal gray, 70.863, went on the cannon barrels. And black was once more used to paint the props. Now, upon closer inspection of the specific scheme I was making, I realized I needed to paint the spinner itself in Model Air Red, 71.269. And lastly, the tips of the props were picked out in Model Color Flat Yellow, 70.953. Next were the HVARs, but as you'll see here soon, I actually wound up not using these due to the issue that we mentioned earlier. Still, as this was before I knew about that, the body of each was picked out in more aluminum. And here's that issue. As you can see, the spacing on the pylons isn't actually wide enough to allow the HVARs enough room to sit next to each other in the proper position. In order to make them fit, you really have to turn every other rocket 45 degrees so the fins overlap, and that just looks weird, so instead I wound up just leaving them off the kit entirely. The kit was then taken outside and given a coat of Mr. Super Clear Gloss Varnish in preparation for decals. The decals themselves were pretty good, especially considering the size of some of them, like these stripes here. They did require a little longer to soak compared to other decals on the market, but it wasn't bad by any means. Once they were ready, they were just simply slid into place, and both water and excess air were squeezed out from under the decal with a cotton bud. The tricky thing here is making sure all of those stripes line up and don't shift on you as you roll the cotton bud across them. There's 6 in total, 2 on the upper wings, 2 on the lower, and 2 on the fuselage. Once all the decals were applied, Microset Decal Setting Solution was applied to all of the larger decals. This solution helps them to conform to the details of the kit and gives it a painted on look. And once they've fully settled down, I like to use the sharp hobby blade to score along any panel lines under the decals. To me, a panel line accent color black was then painted along each panel line. A cotton bud damp but not wet with Artist's White Spirit was then used to clean up any residual panel liner. The kit was given one last coat of gloss varnish, and once the canopy mask is removed, this one's done. Of course, I did promise you all an explanation regarding French February. For that, I've asked Miss Modeler herself to tell you in her own words all about it.
French February. It's something I started a few years ago now, and has evolved ever since. It started because I've always loved French aviation, probably because in, I guess, popular culture in Britain, we don't really talk too much about the Battle of France and the French aviators that led the way for European aviation, or at least challenged some of the leaders of European aviation anyway. And I've always loved them. I think the first one I ever saw probably was the Deltline D520 when I was a kid, and I built the Frog kit, and I built it in Italian markings. But now as an adult, I decided to spend 1 month a year dedicated to the unusual French subjects that we find ourselves with. I also do this in my Discord, so you can find the link for that in the description below. You can build anything, as long as it was either made in France or served in France, whether it's a car, plane, ship, boat, tank, or I guess dioramas, infantry, whatever, as long as it's French in some way. That's the only rules. Just have fun. Anyone of any skill level is welcome. Right, I guess let's get back to your expected video, and hopefully you can go and subscribe to my channel too and see all the other people doing French February this year.
Thank you, Miss Modeler. And with that, we have a completed 172nd F4U-7 Corsair from Italeri all ready for French February. Now, you all know me and Corsairs, but this is actually the first time I've ever built a -7, and I really liked how it turned out. Those stripes in particular look great with the glossy sea blue, I think. But what did you think of it? Let me know in the comments below. It's a real shame about the rockets. I don't know if it's an issue with the pylon spacing or if the rockets were out of scale or what, but had I had the option to move the pylons, I would have given that a try. Oh well. Thank you, Cali Bear, and all of my starter set patrons. Your support is invaluable and keeps this channel going. And thank you for watching. Don't forget to check out Miss Modeler's channel and Discord to see all of the other French February entries. Links are in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please do leave a like and comment, and consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss another upload. Want to watch more? How about this video of last year's French February entry, or this one here that YouTube seems to think is just right for you? Either way, remember, stay safe and keep modeling.